Hello, gentle listener. Welcome to Pets for Sleep. Whether you have joined us before or only just found this quiet corner, this is a place to slow down, learn something gentle about the animals we love, and let the day soften around you. Tonight, we are spending time with parrots, and with one simple question. When a parrot speaks, does it understand what it is saying? Picture a quiet room. A door opens, someone steps inside, and from a perch across the room comes a clear hello. The timing feels almost perfect. No one asked the bird to speak. The word arrived just as a person appeared, exactly where a human greeting would naturally belong. For a moment, it can feel less like imitation and more like conversation. Then, perhaps an hour later, the same parrot says hello to an empty hallway. It may use the word when a telephone rings, when someone leaves, or when it wants attention. That does not make the first greeting meaningless. It only shows why one well-timed word cannot reveal exactly what is happening inside the bird's brain. The sound may be a copy the parrot enjoys making. It may be connected with doors opening and people moving through the house. Or it may have become a true greeting, used because the bird has learned something about the moment in which the word belongs. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through the lives of animals, you are welcome to subscribe. And if it feels natural, to leave a comment sharing where you are listening from tonight. It helps other gentle listeners find Pets for Sleep, one quiet evening at a time. Parrots make this question difficult because their voices can sound so human. An African grey can copy a whistle, a laugh, a microwave beep, or a short phrase with enough detail that someone in another room may briefly mistake the bird for a person. But producing a familiar sound is not the same as understanding it. A recording can repeat a sentence perfectly without knowing that it contains words. A dog may respond to its name even though it cannot copy human speech. Parrots create the opposite puzzle. They reproduce parts of our speech so clearly that the voice itself tempts us to assume full understanding. Even our language reflects that doubt. The verb to parrot means to repeat another person's words or ideas, often without understanding them. Yet imitation is only the beginning. A copied sound can gradually become tied to an event. A bird may hear breakfast each morning just before a bowl arrives. It may hear goodbye when coats are lifted from hooks and the front door opens. It may hear a person's name just before that person enters the room or answers from elsewhere in the house. With enough repeated experience, sounds can begin to predict what happens next. Prediction is not the same as understanding a complete sentence, but it is not empty copying either. The stronger evidence appears when a word continues to work after the scene changes. Can the bird use the same label for an object in a different room? Can it identify one color on several objects instead of memorizing one toy? Can it use a person's name when that person is out of sight? Can it ask for one item, reject the wrong one, and continue requesting the first? These patterns allow researchers to move beyond a charming household moment. A single hello may be coincidence. 100 greetings used mainly when people arrive form a more useful pattern. A label connected with the correct object across new settings is stronger still. And when a parrot chooses among several possible answers, the question begins to move away from simple imitation and toward meaning. the answer will not be one clean yes or no. Some parrot sounds are probably little more than echoes. Others are connected with routines, rewards, people, objects, and social attention. A smaller number have passed controlled tests involving colors, shapes, materials, quantities, and relationships between objects. Before those examples can be judged fairly, one word needs to be handled with care. Understanding is not a single switch that is either fully on or fully off. It has levels, and the first step is learning how to tell those levels apart. At the simplest level, a parrot can recognize that one sound is familiar and another is new. Its own name may cause it to lift its head, turn toward a speaker, or pause while climbing along a perch. This kind of recognition appears throughout the animal world. A dog may run toward the kitchen after hearing the word dinner. A horse can learn a handler's voice. Wild birds distinguish the calls of neighbors from those of unfamiliar birds passing through their territory. Recognition means the sound has become important enough for the brain to notice and separate from the noise around it. A deeper level appears when the sound begins to predict an event. Imagine a companion parrot hearing bedtime each evening. The room grows dimmer soon afterward. A cover may be placed over part of the enclosure, and voices around the house become quieter. After many repetitions, bedtime can become connected with that entire chain of events. The bird may react before the lights have changed because the spoken sound has become an early signal. Dinner can work in a similar way. The word may arrive while a cupboard opens, a metal bowl touches a counter, and pieces of fruit are being prepared. Over time, the sound begins to carry information about what is likely to happen in the next few minutes. Scientists call this association. Association is the process of linking events that repeatedly occur together. It is one of the main ways brains learn from experience. A sound can then gain a more active purpose. A parrot may discover that saying a particular word causes a person to approach. The word "step up" may bring an offered hand. A favorite food label may result in a piece of apple or walnut. A person's name may cause that individual to answer from the next room. At this level, the bird is using a vocalization in a situation where it produces a reliable result. The sound has acquired a job inside the bird's daily life. Making that sound is called production. Responding according to what the sound signifies is called comprehension. Those abilities can exist in different amounts. A parrot may pronounce a word clearly, while showing little evidence that it understands its usual meaning. The same bird may understand a household phrase that it has never learned to say. Meaning becomes stronger when a sound points towards something beyond itself. This is called reference. A label may refer to an object, a person, an action, or a visible quality such as color. Suppose a parrot learns to say blue whenever one particular blue toy is shown. That performance could come from memorizing a single pairing between the toy and the sound. A more demanding test uses several unrelated blue objects. The bird may see a wooden block, a strip of paper, a plastic key, and a piece of cloth. Their shapes and materials differ. Their shared property is color. When the label blue continues to follow that property across new objects, the bird is showing generalization. Generalization means applying learning to a new example, rather than repeating one practice match. This distinction matters because concepts stretch beyond one item. A bird that recognizes only its usual blue toy has learned something useful. A bird that identifies blue on unfamiliar objects has separated color from the rest of the scene. That ability requires the brain to notice which feature remains stable while size, shape, and material keep changing. Human language reaches far beyond these controlled labels. People combine words through grammar, the system that organizes words into meaningful structures. A small number of familiar parts can be arranged into sentences that have never been spoken before. Listeners can understand many of those sentences on the first hearing. This open-ended ability is sometimes called productive grammar because it continually produces new combinations rather than relying only on stored phrases. Evidence that a parrot understands selected labels does not automatically demonstrate this full system. Recognition, prediction, appropriate use, and reference each reveal a different layer. Some birds may remain near the beginning of that ladder. Others may climb several steps through years of social learning and careful training. A sound can therefore carry real information long before the bird understands language in the broad human sense. The earliest foundation for that ability developed outside human homes, among flocks whose members needed flexible calls to remain connected as they moved across wide and changing landscapes. Across a forest canopy, parrots can vanish from sight after only a few wing beats. Leaves close behind them. Branches block the view, and a bird that was nearby a moment ago may now be hidden 30 meters away. In open woodland, the same problem appears across greater distances. A flock spreads out while searching for seeds, fruit, flowers, or insects, leaving each bird with only brief glimpses of the others. Sound keeps the group connected when vision cannot. Wild parrots call while flying, feeding, resting, and returning toward a nesting area. Some calls help a separated bird locate its companions. Others coordinate movement or warn nearby birds that something has changed. Pairs also exchange sounds during courtship and while caring for a nest. Near a nesting hollow, vocal signals can help defend the space from other parrots that approach too closely. These behaviors existed long before any parrot heard a person say hello. They depend on an ability called vocal production learning. This means an animal can change the sounds it produces after listening to sounds made by others. The call does not have to arrive in a complete and fixed form at birth. Young birds begin with inherited abilities, including the body structures needed to make sound. Experience then helps shape the exact calls they use. A parrot may adjust pitch, timing, or the pattern of notes until its call fits the sounds used by nearby companions. Among birds, advanced vocal production learning is found most clearly in parrots, songbirds, and hummingbirds. Many other birds produce complex calls, but those calls follow a more strongly inherited pattern. A chicken does not need to hear another chicken before giving many of its basic alarm calls. Parrots have much greater freedom to copy new sounds and alter older ones. That freedom is useful because parrot social life often changes. A flock may divide during the day as smaller groups search for food. Those groups can rejoin later near a water source or a safe place to sleep. Young birds eventually leave the nest and enter a wider social network. Adults may form pair bonds, meet unfamiliar neighbors, or spend time with different feeding groups as seasons change. A rigid set of calls would still carry some information. Flexible calls can respond to the birds that are present now. Researchers often describe parrots as open-ended vocal learners. Open-ended means that learning can continue into adulthood. Many songbirds learn most of their songs during a limited period early in life. Parrots can keep adding sounds, changing them, or allowing unused sounds to fade across many years. This does not mean every parrot constantly builds a larger vocabulary. A broad study published in 2022 collected reports on companion parrots from dozens of species. Among adult African grey parrots, older birds did not simply possess more and more copied sounds with each passing year. Their vocal repertoires appeared to change rather than expand without limit. A sound used often in one home might disappear after the bird moves to a different home. The name of a former caregiver may become less common. A new greeting, household sound, or person's name can take its place. Researchers suggested that this pattern may reflect the changing social lives parrots evolved to manage. In the wild, yesterday's useful call may belong to a flock member that is no longer nearby. A bird that can adjust its calls has a better chance of matching its current companions. This flexibility can help when flock membership shifts, when a pair forms, or when young birds begin joining adults away from the nest. The same learning system also gives companion parrots access to human speech. Inside a home, the available social sounds may include a telephone, a laugh, a person's name, and the short phrases repeated during feeding. The parrot's brain treats those sounds as material worth studying because socially important sounds have always mattered to its kind. Mimicry, therefore, has a practical history. It grew from the demands of moving through landscapes where companions regularly disappeared from view and where a call could restore contact across the distance. A learned call may do more than reveal that a bird is nearby. Its fine acoustic details can also carry clues about which bird is calling, which relationship is active, and who is expected to answer. A parrot flying beyond the canopy may vanish from view in only a few seconds. Its companion remains behind, surrounded by leaves, branches, and the moving sounds of other birds. Visual contact has ended, yet the social connection can continue through a repeated call. These sounds are often called contact calls. They help separated birds keep track of one another while feeding, flying, or moving through dense vegetation. A contact call can reveal that another bird is still nearby. Its finer details may also help identify which bird produced it. Two parrots of the same species use similar vocal equipment and share many basic call patterns. Within that shared pattern, each individual can develop small differences in pitch, rhythm, and the shape of particular notes. A recording displayed on a computer can show these differences as visible sound patterns. One bird's call may rise sharply near the end. Another may contain a longer middle note or a slightly rougher series of vibrations. To a human listener, the calls may seem almost identical. Parrots can detect acoustic details that are easy for us to miss. Some call features also become similar among mates or members of the same social group. This process is known as vocal convergence. Convergence happens when the calls of socially connected birds gradually move closer together. The result can carry two kinds of information at once. Part of the sound may connect the caller with a pair or flock. Other details can preserve the bird's individual identity. Parrots can also respond by changing their own call to resemble the sound of a particular companion. Researchers call this vocal matching. The bird hears another individual's call and answers with a version shaped toward that caller's pattern. This resembles calling back in a form that is especially likely to attract one bird's attention. A study published in 2012 tested this ability in orange-fronted conuries. These small green parrots have patches of orange feathers above their beaks and live in social flocks in parts of Mexico and Central America. Researchers worked with pairs of birds and used recordings to create controlled playback trials. A speaker could make it seem as though one bird's contact call had been copied and directed back toward it. Other recordings provided calls that did not match the same individual as closely. The conuries reacted differently depending on what they heard. When the playback simulated an imitation directed toward a particular bird, that bird was more likely to answer. Its response also tended to arrive sooner. The matching sound appeared to capture the intended recipient's attention more effectively than a general call. This gives vocal imitation a practical social function. A bird can shape its reply toward one member of the group, increasing the chance that this individual responds. The sound works somewhat like an address placed at the beginning of a message. Several important distinctions keep the comparison accurate. A parrot's own signature is the individual pattern found in its contact call. Vocal matching occurs when another bird copies or approaches that pattern while responding. A human proper name is a separate kind of learned label used within a much larger language system. These forms are related through their social function, yet they are not identical. The Canure experiment did not show parrots speaking names in the human sense. It showed that learned acoustic details can direct communication toward a specific social partner. That ability existed in wild parrots long before they entered homes and began hearing names such as Charlie, Lucy, or Sam. A companion parrot that later copies a person's name is therefore using a vocal system already prepared to notice identity. Human speech supplies a new sound. The older parrot system supplies the attention, memory, and social purpose that can make the sound useful. Individual signatures also create a deeper puzzle about development. A young parrot could inherit the basic structure of its species' calls through its genes. It might shape a personal version through practice as its voice matures. The adults around the nest may also provide a pattern that the chick gradually learns. Separating those possibilities requires more than listening to related birds. Researchers had to move eggs between nests and observe which family the young parrots eventually sounded like. That work took place at Hato Masaguaral, a cattle ranch and wildlife reserve in the Venezuelan state of Guárico. The landscape there includes open grassland, scattered trees, and patches of dry forest. Green-rumped parrotlets, known scientifically as Phorpus passerinus, breed in this region. They are small parrots, only about 12 centimeters long, with green feathers and short tails. Researchers provided artificial nest tubes so the birds could raise their chicks in places that were easy to monitor. During the breeding seasons of 2007 and 2008, the team followed 17 nests. 34 adult parrotlets were fitted with colored leg bands, allowing each bird to be identified from a distance. The adults entered and left the nest tubes while recorders captured the calls they gave near their chicks. These recordings were made before the young birds had developed mature contact calls of their own. That timing was important. If the adults had been recorded only after the chicks began calling clearly, the direction of learning would have been harder to establish. A parent might copy a young bird. A young bird might copy a parent. Early recordings gave the researchers a vocal starting point before the nestlings had produced their finished signatures. 12 nests were chosen for a cross-fostering experiment. Cross-fostering means moving young animals, so they are raised by adults that are not their biological parents. The researchers transferred eggs between nests before the chicks hatched. A chick's genes still came from its original parents, while its daily sounds came from the foster adults feeding and protecting it. 3 of the selected nests failed during the breeding process. 9 cross-fostered nests remained successful and produced young birds that could be followed through development. The researchers recorded calls from the adults and from the growing nestlings over many weeks. By the end of the project, they had analyzed just under 5,000 calls. Each call was turned into a visual pattern called a spectrogram. A spectrogram shows how the frequencies inside a sound change over time. Higher notes appear in one part of the image, lower notes appear in another, and the call's timing stretches across the page. This allowed the team to compare details that might pass too quickly for a human ear. Male and female nestlings both developed individually distinctive contact calls. Their signatures did not simply match the birds that had supplied their genes. The young parrots tended to resemble the adults that had raised them. A chick moved into a foster nest, developed call features connected with its foster family, even though its biological parents were calling elsewhere. That pattern made social learning the stronger explanation. The genes still provided the basic parrot body and the general ability to produce species-typical sounds. Experience helped shape the fine details that identified one young bird within the group. The study was published online in July of 2011 in Proceedings of the Royal Society, B. Its result was important because it showed that individual vocal signatures can be supplied through ordinary family interaction. The chicks were not trained by people. They were not rewarded for copying a special sound in a laboratory. They listened from inside a nest and gradually formed calls that reflected the adults caring for them. These signatures are sometimes compared with names. The comparison is useful when it stays precise. A human name is a word inside a large language system. A parrotlet signature is an individually distinctive contact call that helps other birds recognize or address one particular animal. Both can guide attention toward an individual. Their structure and linguistic meaning remain different. For a young parrotlet, the learned call becomes part of belonging to a family and later joining a wider flock. That same early sensitivity helps explain why companion parrots listen so closely to the voices around them. The ability to learn a socially important sound begins before a bird has ever heard a human word. Turning that learned pattern into clear speech requires another set of adaptations, because a parrot must shape vowels and consonants without human lips or a human voice box. Inside a parrot's chest and throat, sound begins along a route that differs from the human voice. People create voiced sounds in the larynx, the structure commonly called the voice box. The larynx sits near the top of the windpipe. Air from the lungs passes through it and causes 2 folds of tissue to vibrate. Those vibrations become the raw material for speech. A parrot uses an organ called the syrinx. The syrinx sits much lower in the respiratory system, close to the point where the trachea divides into two tubes leading toward the lungs. Its name comes from an ancient Greek word for a pipe or flute. Soft tissues inside the syrinx move as air passes through them. Their rapid vibration creates a basic tone that can be raised, lowered, roughened, or divided into more complex patterns. The arrangement is different from mammalian vocal folds, though both systems turn moving air into sound. Some birds can control the two sides of the syrinx separately. This allows them to produce two tones at nearly the same time or move rapidly between frequencies. Parrots combine that flexible sound source with careful control of everything above it. The raw tone travels upward through the trachea. It then passes through the throat and mouth before leaving through the open beak. These spaces act as acoustic filters. A filter changes which parts of a sound become stronger and which parts become quieter. The length of the trachea affects resonance, meaning the frequencies that are naturally amplified inside the tube. Movement in the throat alters the size and shape of another resonating space. The beak changes the opening through which the sound escapes. A wider opening can produce a different acoustic pattern from a narrow one. The tongue adds another adjustable surface. Parrot tongues are thick, muscular, and remarkably mobile. Small shifts can reshape the airspace inside the mouth, changing the frequencies that reach the listener. This is especially useful when approximating vowel sounds. Human vowels, such as ee, ah, and oo, differ largely because the tongue changes position, while the lips and jaw reshape the vocal tract. A parrot lacks flexible human lips. It can still create similar results by coordinating its tongue, beak, throat, and sound source. Researchers have watched this coordination in motion. In work published in 2012, scientists used X-ray recordings to observe monk parakeets, while the birds produced natural calls. Monk parakeets are small green parrots native to South America, though introduced populations now live in cities across Europe and North America. The moving X-ray images allowed researchers to see through feathers and skin, while each bird vocalized. The tongue shifted forward, backward, upward, and downward during different parts of a call. Beak opening changed at the same time. The trachea also lengthened and shortened slightly as surrounding structures moved. These motions formed one coordinated system rather than a collection of isolated tricks. The tongue did not create the call by itself. It reshaped sound already produced in the syrinx. Changes in the beak and throat altered that sound again, before it reached the air outside the bird. Scientists describe this arrangement as a source and filter system. The syrinx acts as the source. Everything above it forms the changing filter. A parrot, copying a human phrase, must control both parts with great precision. It has to match pitch, timing, rhythm, and the shifting pattern of frequencies that make one vowel sound different from another. Consonant-like sounds create further challenges. People use their lips for sounds such as p and b. A parrot approximates them through rapid changes in airflow, tongue placement, and beak movement. The final result can be so accurate that a person in another room mistakes the bird for a familiar family member. That level of accuracy reveals fine hearing, memory, and motor control. It shows that the bird can turn an acoustic pattern into a sequence of movements inside its own body. Meaning still requires separate evidence. A beautifully copied phrase may remain connected only to the pleasure of making the sound or the reaction it receives. To reproduce that phrase later, the parrot must store a memory of what it heard, monitor its own attempt, and adjust the result over repeated practice. Those comparisons depend on a network of brain regions arranged in a pattern that scientists have found only in parrots. The movements of the syrinx, tongue, throat, and beak begin with instructions sent through the brain. Those instructions do not come from one isolated talking center. Vocal learning depends on several connected regions that handle hearing, memory, movement, and feedback. A parrot first hears a target sound. The acoustic pattern must remain in memory long enough for the bird to attempt a copy. Motor regions then send signals toward the muscles controlling breathing and the vocal tract. As the parrot listens to its own attempt, the brain compares the result with the stored pattern. Small differences lead to small corrections during later practice. This repeating loop allows a rough sound to become more accurate over time. The same process can help a young parrot shape a family contact call, or help a companion bird copy the tone of a human voice. Scientists have identified specialized groups of brain cells involved in this work. A tightly connected group of cells serving one main task is often called a nucleus. In parrots, several vocal learning nuclei form a network linking higher brain regions with areas that control movement. Some of those pathways reach toward the brainstem, the lower part of the brain that manages many basic body functions. From there, signals continue toward the muscles involved in breathing and sound production. A direct route from higher vocal regions toward the brainstem appears especially important for learned vocal control. It allows a heard sound to guide a planned sequence of movements with unusual precision. In 2015, researchers compared the vocal systems of 9 parrot species. They examined both the physical arrangement of brain regions and patterns of gene activity inside those regions. Gene activity reveals which instructions inside a cell are being used at a particular time. The study uncovered a structure described as a song system within a song system. Each major parrot vocal region contained a central area called the core. Around that core sat an additional area called the shell. The names describe their positions. The core lies near the center, while the shell surrounds it like an outer layer. Core regions share important features with vocal learning systems found in songbirds and hummingbirds. These 3 bird groups evolved advanced vocal learning along separate branches of the bird family tree. Their brain systems therefore show examples of similar solutions developing under similar pressures. The surrounding shell regions appear to be a distinctive feature of parrots. Their exact role remains under study. Researchers have proposed that the shells may contribute to the exceptional flexibility of parrot vocal learning, including the ability to imitate unfamiliar sounds throughout life. The balance between core and shell tissue differed across the 9 species. Some parrots had proportionally larger shell regions than others. The authors suggested that larger shells might be associated with more complex vocal abilities. That possibility still requires broader testing across more species and carefully measured behavior. One of the birds included in the comparison was the kea. Keas are large mountain parrots native to New Zealand's South Island. They belong to an early branch of parrot evolution and are known for their curiosity and varied calls. Their brains contain simpler, more basic shell regions. Because the Kea branch separated from other parrots at least 29 million years ago, the finding suggests that the core and shell arrangement had already begun developing by that time. The system behind modern parrot mimicry therefore has roots extending through tens of millions of years of evolution. Another useful clue comes from counting neurons. Neurons are the cells that receive, process, and transmit information through electrical and chemical signals. Parrots and corvids, the bird family that includes crows and ravens, pack unusually large numbers of neurons into the forebrain. The forebrain supports complex learning, planning, sensory processing, and flexible behavior. Some large-brained parrots possess forebrain neuron totals comparable with those of primates whose brains are much heavier. A bird brain can fit this processing power into a compact skull because many of its neurons are small and densely arranged. Neuron count alone cannot serve as a complete measure of intelligence. Connections between cells, the organization of networks, and the demands placed on those networks also matter. The dense forebrain gives parrots substantial processing capacity within a body light enough for flight. Together, the vocal nuclei, direct motor pathways, and packed forebrain support, a demanding cycle of listening and correction. The bird stores a sound, attempts it, hears the difference, and gradually adjusts its movements. That architecture gives parrots access to an enormous range of possible noises. Daily experience determines which sounds receive the most practice. Inside a human home, a laugh that brings attention, or a name that makes someone answer, can become far more valuable than the many other sounds passing through the room. Morning gives a companion parrot a repeating map of household sound. A bedroom door opens. Water runs through a kitchen tap. A cupboard closes, and a familiar person says the bird's name while carrying over a food bowl. Later, a telephone rings or a microwave gives a short electronic beep. Someone laughs from the sofa. Keys move near the front door, followed by a phrase such as "see you later." Each sound appears inside a larger pattern of movement, objects, and social activity. A parrot can learn throughout its life, so these daily patterns continue shaping its vocal repertoire long after it has reached adulthood. Repertoire means the collection of sounds a bird regularly produces. For one companion parrot, that collection might include a whistle, 2 names, several short phrases, and the squeak of a particular door. Another may copy a cough, a dog's bark, or the exact rhythm of a household alarm. The sounds that remain in regular use often have social value. A quiet noise heard once from an appliance may quickly fade. A phrase that makes everyone turn around can receive attention every time it appears. This difference is shaped by selective attention. Brains constantly receive more sensory information than they can treat as equally important. Selective attention allows an animal to focus on signals connected with food, movement, social partners, or sudden change. For a companion parrot, a person's voice can become one of the most important sound sources in the home. Humans may serve as the bird's main available social partners, especially when it does not live with other parrots. This does not mean the bird mistakes a person for a feathered member of its own species. It means that people supply much of the responsive social activity around it. They answer calls, bring objects, open doors, and take part in familiar routines. A sound linked with those responses becomes easier to notice and worth repeating. This process is called social reinforcement. Reinforcement occurs when a behavior is followed by a result that makes the behavior more likely to happen again. Food can serve as reinforcement, though it is only one possibility. Attention may be enough. Access to a toy, a person's hand, or a different room can also strengthen a vocal habit. Even movement can matter. A parrot that says "step up" and is carried toward a favorite window has produced a sound followed by a useful change. Human reactions often teach these lessons unintentionally. Suppose a parrot copies a person's laugh. The family laughs in return, approaches the perch, and repeats the sound. The bird has received an energetic social response. That copied laugh may appear more often over the following days. A rude word can become especially persistent for the same reason. Shock produces wide eyes, sudden voices, and immediate attention. From the parrot's point of view, the sound has worked extremely well. Calm household noises can become valuable through repetition instead of excitement. A name spoken before someone enters the room gains predictive value. The scrape of a bowl may signal food. A short bedtime phrase may be followed by dim lights and reduced activity at roughly the same hour each evening. Some vocalizations lose their usefulness as circumstances change. A bird moved to a new home may gradually stop saying the former caregiver's name. Fresh names and routines can enter the repertoire. This replacement fits the flexible social learning seen in parrots across adulthood. Responsive interaction also differs from passive exposure. A recording can repeat one phrase hundreds of times with perfect consistency. It cannot notice whether the parrot attempted a clearer sound. It cannot hand over the named object or answer a call from another room. A person can respond differently to each attempt. The human may repeat the word slowly, display an object, or pause while the bird listens. Roles can also change, with the parrot sometimes hearing and sometimes producing the sound. These back and forth exchanges supply timing, consequence, and social relevance. The most successful experimental teaching methods use those features deliberately. They allow parrots to watch one individual answer another, observe mistakes being corrected, and see that specific sounds lead to specific objects. Household learning often develops less formally, yet the same basic forces remain active. The bird hears a sound inside a social situation. Its own attempt produces a response. Repeated success helps the sound remain available. A useful vocalization can therefore become firmly established before the bird has shown what the sound represents. Evidence of meaning grows when that sound appears in the appropriate situation, points toward a stable object or event, and continues working when familiar details are changed. A parrot may begin with the sound itself. It hears a doorbell, stores part of the pattern, and experiments with its own voice. Early attempts may be rough. The pitch can be too low, the rhythm too slow, or the final note may stop too soon. With practice, the bird adjusts its breathing, syrinx, tongue, and beak until the imitation comes closer to the original. Scientists call this vocal production learning. Production learning changes the acoustic form of a vocalization through experience. It explains how a parrot can add a new whistle, phrase, or household noise to its repertoire. A second kind of learning determines when that sound appears. This is called vocal usage learning. The bird already knows how to produce the call or phrase. Experience links it with a new situation, person, or result. A copied doorbell offers a simple example. Reproducing the electronic chime shows production learning. Making that sound after someone knocks adds a learned connection between the noise at the door and the copied signal. A parrot might also say hello when a person enters. The word may begin as an imitation heard many times. Repeated arrivals gradually give it a place in the daily routine. Production and usage can develop at different speeds. A bird may copy a sound accurately before using it in any clear context. Another vocalization may remain imperfect in pronunciation, while appearing reliably at the right moment. The link between events often begins through association. Association forms when one event repeatedly predicts another. The sound of a food cupboard may come before breakfast. A coat being lifted from a hook may come before someone leaves. A person's name may be followed by footsteps from another room. The parrot's brain records these patterns across repeated days. Prediction allows the bird to react before the full event has unfolded. Association is a basic part of learning in many animals, including humans. A child hears the sound of an ice cream truck and expects a familiar treat. A dog hears a leash clip and moves toward the door. For a parrot, a spoken phrase can become another reliable signal inside the environment. Consequences strengthen some connections. Suppose a bird says apple while looking toward a bowl. A person offers a piece of apple. The sound has now been followed by a specific result. When that sequence works many times, the vocalization becomes more likely to appear in similar situations. A different response may weaken the pattern. If every spoken food word produces the same sunflower seed, the bird has less reason to preserve separate labels. Meaning becomes easier to test when two signals lead to different reactions. This ability is called discrimination. A parrot showing discrimination may respond one way to red and another way to blue. It may approach one person's name while ignoring an unfamiliar name. The bird is treating the signals as different, rather than responding only to the presence of a human voice. Discrimination still leaves room for narrow memorization. One blue toy could become linked with the sound blue through hundreds of repeated trials. A stronger test changes the surrounding details. The familiar color may appear on a wooden block, a paper triangle, or a plastic key. Researchers can also move the test into another room or ask a different person to speak. When the learned response continues across these changes, the bird is showing generalization. Generalization means extending learning to new examples that share the important feature. A transfer test measures this ability directly. The parrot receives a combination it has not practiced before. A green wooden square may be placed beside a red metal key. The bird could then be asked about color, shape, or material. Success requires more than remembering one object and one answer. The correct response depends on noticing which feature the spoken prompt has made important. These tests create a gradual scale of evidence. Accurate copying reveals production learning. Reliable timing shows usage learning. Different responses to different signals demonstrate discrimination. Transfer to unfamiliar examples supports a broader category or concept. Useful meaning can grow through these layers as a sound becomes connected with a stable part of the bird's world. Even a perfect answer can remain difficult to interpret because humans often provide small clues without realizing it. A glance toward the correct object, a change in posture, or a slight difference in tone may guide the bird. Controlled experiments are needed to separate flexible understanding from memorized routines and accidental help. A person asking an animal a question may offer useful clues without noticing. Their eyes may move toward the correct object. Their voice can become slightly slower as the right answer begins. A small change in posture may signal that the animal should stop searching. These accidental signals are called cues. Cueing became famous through a horse named Clever Hans in Germany during the early 1900s. Hans appeared able to answer arithmetic questions by tapping one hoof against the ground. In 1907, psychologist Oskar Pfungst showed that the horse's success depended heavily on the people watching him. As Hans approached the correct number of taps, their posture and facial tension changed. The movements were tiny, and the humans usually had no idea they were making them. Hans had developed an impressive ability to read people, though the taps did not reveal an understanding of arithmetic. Parrot experiments face a similar problem. A trainer holding a red wooden block may glance toward it while asking about color. The person might lean forward after an incorrect sound and relax as the bird begins saying red. Even a short pause before one word can guide an animal that has spent years studying human behavior. Memorized routines create a different trap. Suppose the same blue key appears during every training session. The bird may learn that seeing this object is followed by the sound blue. That pairing can become strong through repetition. The performance still leaves open whether the parrot recognizes color or has memorized one object and one response. Researchers can weaken that explanation by changing the objects. Blue may appear on paper, wool, wood, or plastic. The shape can also change from a key to a triangle. A true color category should continue across these unfamiliar combinations. The spoken question must vary as well. One object can support several correct answers. A green wooden triangle has a color, a material, and a shape. What color should produce green? What shape requires triangle? A question about material should lead to wood. The visible object remains the same while the requested property changes. This makes it harder for the bird to respond from appearance alone. Trials also become stronger when their order is unpredictable. The researcher should avoid presenting color questions in a fixed sequence or using the same object immediately after training it. A novel trial uses a combination the animal has never practiced. The bird may know every feature separately while encountering that exact arrangement for the first time. First responses matter because repeated guessing can eventually produce the correct answer by chance. Incorrect answers must stay in the record. Silence and refusal also carry information about performance. Removing these outcomes would make the results appear more reliable than they were. Blind evaluation provides another safeguard. A blind evaluator is a person who judges the response without seeing the correct object or knowing which answer is expected. This person may listen from behind a screen or review a recording later. Their task is to decide what word the parrot produced. Because they do not know the target, their expectations are less likely to shape what they believe they heard. The difficulty increases further when the parrot must choose from a large vocal repertoire. Selecting between two buttons gives a 50% chance of success. A bird choosing among many possible labels faces a much wider field of answers. Color words may compete with names for shapes, objects, quantities, and materials. Irene Pepperberg used changing objects, unfamiliar combinations, and broad sets of possible vocal responses in her work with African grey parrots. Some tests included people other than the main trainer, along with evaluators who could not see the object being presented. Her methods and interpretations have also received scientific criticism. Researchers have debated the effects of long training histories, repeated testing, and close relationships between birds and trainers. Those concerns make careful reporting especially important. Experimental controls cannot reveal every private thought inside an animal. They remove simpler explanations until one account fits the full pattern better than the alternatives. A response that survives changes in speaker, object, location, and question order carries more weight than a charming answer produced once at home. That demanding standard shaped the work that began in June of 1977, when Pepperberg brought a young African grey named Alex into a very unusual classroom. Irene Pepperberg found Alex in a pet shop near Chicago in June of 1977. He was an African grey parrot, roughly 12 to 13 months old, with pale grey feathers, a black curved beak, and the bright red tail typical of his species. Alex had hatched in 1976. His name began as an abbreviation for Avian Language Experiment, though Pepperberg later also connected it with Avian Learning Experiment. Their work would continue for about 30 years, until Alex died unexpectedly in 2007. At the time, many scientists remained cautious about claims of complex thought in birds. Laboratory animals were often taught through conditioning. A light might turn on, the animal might press a lever, and a food reward would follow. This approach can measure memory and learning very well. It reveals less about whether an animal can use a sound during a flexible social exchange. Pepperberg wanted Alex to learn labels in a setting that included attention, choice, and communication between individuals. She adapted a teaching system known as the model-rival method. During a lesson, Alex watched two people interact with an object. One person acted as the trainer and held something simple, perhaps a piece of cork, a wooden block, or a metal key. The trainer then asked the second person what the object was. That second person served as the model by demonstrating the response Alex was expected to learn. The same person also acted as a rival because Alex had to compete with them for the trainer's attention and for access to the object. Suppose the trainer held up a cork and asked, "What's this?" The model might answer cork. A correct response led to praise and possession of the cork. Alex could watch the entire exchange from only a short distance away. He heard the spoken label, saw the object, and observed the result that followed the answer. The model sometimes made an error. A wrong label caused the trainer to remove the object or withhold it briefly. The model then tried again and produced the correct word. This allowed Alex to observe correction as part of the lesson. Answers had consequences, and errors could be repaired through another attempt. The two humans regularly changed roles. The former trainer became the model, while the former model began asking questions. Alex therefore saw that either individual could speak, listen, succeed, or make a mistake. The exchange remained flexible rather than becoming one repeated performance between a fixed questioner and a fixed respondent. The objects themselves often served as rewards. When Alex correctly labeled cork, he could receive the piece of cork to hold and chew. Naming a key could result in access to the key. This is called intrinsic reinforcement. The reward is directly connected with the meaning of the response. A sunflower seed given after every correct answer might teach a bird that speaking produces food. Receiving the named object creates a clearer connection between the sound and the thing it refers to. Social attention added another layer. Alex watched one person gain praise and an interesting object, while he remained outside the exchange. His natural interest in human interaction helped draw him into the lesson. The model rival method combined observation with competition and direct results. Over the following decades, Alex acquired more than 100 vocal labels. His repertoire included names for familiar objects, colors, shapes, materials, and quantities. He also learned words connected with actions and requests. The total vocabulary attracted public attention, though the number of sounds was only a starting point. A parrot could memorize 100 separate pairings, while remaining tied to the exact objects used during training. Stronger evidence required the labels to remain accurate when familiar properties appeared in unfamiliar combinations. A green key might become blue. A wooden triangle could be replaced by one made from paper. The same object could support a question about color during one trial and material during another. The teaching method had given Alex a large set of possible answers. The real test began when only one feature among many determined which answer belonged. A single object can carry several kinds of information at once. Imagine Alex looking at a small wooden triangle painted green. Its color is green. Its shape is triangular. Its material is wood. The object may also have a familiar name based on how it has been used during training. Only the spoken question reveals which part matters. When a trainer asks, "What color?" the expected answer is green. A question about shape requires triangle. If the trainer asks, "What matter?" Alex must identify wood. Pepperberg's studies often use the word matter to mean the material from which an object was made. The same item remained in view, yet the correct answer changed with the wording of the prompt. This placed several possible labels in competition. Alex could not rely only on seeing the object and producing its most familiar name. He had to attend to the question and select one property from the complete object. Across roughly 30 years of work, Alex learned vocal labels for more than 50 objects. His reported repertoire also included 7 colors and 5 shapes. He could identify several materials, including wood, paper, wool, cork, and metal. These categories allowed researchers to rearrange familiar properties into combinations that Alex had never been taught as complete units. A green wooden key might be replaced by a blue one. A paper triangle could appear after most earlier triangles had been made from wood. Wool might be shaped into an unfamiliar form. The color, shape, and material were already known, while their exact combination was new. These trials tested transfer. Transfer occurs when learning survives a change in the surrounding details. Suppose Alex had learned the sound green only while viewing one particular wooden block. He might have memorized a direct connection between that object and that sound. Presenting a green key, a green strip of paper, or a green piece of wool makes that strategy less useful. Each item differs in texture and outline. Greenness remains the shared feature. When the same color label follows that feature across unrelated objects, the response suggests feature abstraction. Feature abstraction means separating one property from everything else the senses receive. A parrot sees the whole object at once. Its brain must isolate color from shape, material, size, and location. The spoken label then becomes connected with the chosen feature, rather than with one complete scene. Shape labels faced a similar test. A triangle could be green during one trial and red during another. Its material might change from paper to wood. If triangle remained the response to a shape question, the label continued to follow the arrangement of edges and corners through those other changes. Material required attention to a different kind of information. Wood, metal, paper, and wool can vary in color and shape. Their surfaces reflect light differently and feel different when touched or handled. Alex's answers showed that some learned sounds remain connected with these broader categories across varied examples. His performance was not perfect. He sometimes gave an incorrect label, repeated an answer, refused to respond, or became interested in something else nearby. Those outcomes were included when researchers calculated his results. Across controlled tasks, his correct responses appeared far more often than chance would predict. The importance of the work came from flexible selection among many possible words. A simple imitation task might require Alex to repeat whatever a person had just said. These tests required him to produce a label from memory after inspecting an object and hearing a particular kind of question. The answer could come from the object's color on one trial and its material shortly afterward. Novel combinations made memorizing every complete item increasingly difficult. Some of Alex's vocalizations therefore behaved like labels that continued to point toward a stable property, while the rest of the scene changed. That pattern moves beyond a sound tied to one favorite toy. It shows a bird sorting visible objects into categories that humans also recognize. The remaining difficulty lies in the question itself. Alex may have learned separate labels for color, shape, and material. Greater flexibility appears when the same pair of objects supports different answers, depending on whether he is asked what they share, how they differ, or which one is larger. Place a green wooden triangle beside a green metal key. The two objects share a color. Their shapes and materials differ. Looking at them reveals several correct facts at once, so the spoken question must determine which fact Alex should report. When asked, "What same?" the correct response was color. Alex did not need to say green. He needed to identify the kind of feature the objects shared. A different pair might have the same shape while carrying different colors. In that case, the expected answer became shape. Two items made from wood could require the answer matter, the word used in these experiments for material. This task depended on relationships rather than labels attached permanently to individual objects. Green belonged to each green item. Sameness existed only when two items were compared. Pepperberg tested Alex with combinations involving color, shape, and material. The objects could share one property and differ in the others. Their arrangement changed across trials, and the relevant category could not be known until the question was heard. The same pair could also support a question about difference. Imagine a blue wooden triangle beside a blue metal square. Asked what was the same, Alex should respond color. Asked what was different, he had two possible categories: shape and matter. Researchers designed particular object pairs so the expected relationship could be scored clearly. Across these trials, Alex often selected the category label that matched the spoken prompt. He was responding with words such as color, shape, or matter, rather than simply naming the visible object. That distinction required several steps. First, he had to inspect both objects. Their properties had to be compared. The words same or different then directed attention toward a relationship, and the final response identified the category in which that relationship appeared. Scientists call this relational reasoning. A relationship changes when the comparison changes. One wooden block may be larger than a small key and smaller than a wide piece of cardboard. Its size has stayed constant. Its place in the comparison has changed. Alex's tests involving bigger and smaller used this flexible feature. A trainer might hold up two objects and ask, "What color bigger?" Alex had to determine which object was larger, ignore its other properties, and then report that object's color. A question such as "What matters smaller?" required him to locate the smaller item and identify what it was made from. The answer could not be found in one word of the question or one feature of the display. It depended on combining the comparison with the requested property. A study published in 1991 examined Alex's judgments of relative size. He had learned size differences with certain familiar objects. Researchers then presented unfamiliar items and new combinations. His performance showed transfer, meaning the learned relationship continued to guide him when the exact training display was gone. Bigger and smaller had become useful across more than one memorized pair. Absence also had to be represented. During same and different testing, some pairs shared none of the properties under consideration. Other displays contained no difference relevant to the prompt. Alex learned to respond with none when the requested relationship was absent. This word did not yet amount to the full mathematical idea of zero. It supplied a practical label for a missing match or category. Its later use in numerical work would make the idea more significant. These experiments moved the evidence beyond identifying blue or naming a triangle. The correct response depended on hearing whether the trainer requested sameness, difference, relative size, or a particular property belonging to one member of the pair. Visible objects supplied the raw information. The wording selected which relationship mattered. That pattern offers stronger evidence of comprehension because the same display could lead to different answers under different spoken instructions. Relationships, such as larger and smaller, still depend on visible qualities. Number reaches farther. 3 wooden keys and 3 pieces of cork share no color, shape, or material, yet they can carry the same quantity. For Alex, that meant learning a property that remained stable even when every object in the set was replaced. On a table, 3 metal keys and 3 pieces of cork have almost nothing visible in common. Their colors may differ. Their surfaces reflect light in different ways, and their shapes come from entirely different uses. One feature remains shared across both sets. Each contains 3 objects. This total is called cardinality. Cardinality means the number that tells how many items are present in a complete group. The word 3 does not belong to a key, a piece of cork, or any other particular object. It can describe 3 bells, 3 blocks, or 3 spots of color. Quantity remains stable, while identity and arrangement change around it. Alex learned vocal labels for sets containing as many as 6 items. Researchers could place several objects before him and ask how many were present. The pieces might be arranged in a row during one trial and scattered across a tray during another. Spacing could change without changing the total. A group of 4 objects remained 4, whether the pieces touched one another or sat several centimeters apart. This required Alex to attend to the number of separate items rather than the overall size of the display. A wide cluster of 2 large blocks could cover more table space than 6 small buttons. Area and quantity, therefore, had to be separated. His numerical tasks became more demanding when several kinds of objects appeared together. Imagine a tray holding blue wooden blocks, green keys, and red pieces of paper. A question about the number of blue objects required selective counting. Alex had to identify the requested feature, ignore the distractors, and report the size of the matching group. Distractors are items included to compete for attention without belonging in the answer. Their presence reduces the chance that a bird can respond by counting everything it sees. The spoken number labels became connected with groups rather than fixed arrangements. 4 could apply to corks during one trial and keys during the next. This transfer is central to numerical understanding. The visible scene changes while the quantity stays constant. Researchers later explored whether several forms of the same number could become connected. A physical set of objects provides one form. A spoken word such as 5 provides another. The written Arabic numeral used by people supplies a third form. Arabic numerals are the familiar written symbols from 0 through 9. Alex learned to connect some written numerals with spoken labels and with sets containing the matching number of objects. This kind of work examines whether different signs can point toward one shared numerical idea. Alex was also learning labels for 7 and 8 later in his life. His abilities at those higher values were still being tested, so they should be treated differently from the more established results involving quantities up to 6. The same caution applies to his final addition study. Researchers presented combinations of small sets and asked for their total. Across 12 preliminary trials, Alex answered 9 correctly. That performance was suggestive because it occurred above what random guessing would usually produce. 12 trials remain a very small sample. Alex died unexpectedly in September of 2007, before the researchers could collect the larger body of data needed for a stronger conclusion. His earlier use of none also entered the numerical work. When a requested quantity or matching set was absent, none could indicate that nothing met the condition. Researchers sometimes describe this as a zero-like concept. The phrase matters because human zero carries several mathematical roles. It can mark an empty set, hold a place inside numbers such as 100, and participate in formal arithmetic. Alex's responses showed a useful representation of absence. They did not establish every meaning contained within the human system of zero. Even within those limits, quantity marked a significant change in the evidence. Color can be seen on a surface. Material can be touched. Number survives when every object is exchanged for something new. Alex's vocal labels sometimes followed that invisible structure across different sets and arrangements. Most of these results came while a researcher asked a carefully controlled question. A more personal form of communication appears when the parrot begins the exchange itself, choosing a word because it wants a particular object, activity, or destination. A spoken label can describe something sitting on a table. A request uses that label to alter the situation. Alex learned short frames such as "I want cork" and "wanna go chair." The final word could change depending on the object, place, or activity he was seeking. This created a useful distinction between naming and requesting. Seeing a piece of cork and saying cork identifies the object. Adding "I want" turns the same label into an attempt to receive it. The model rival lessons had prepared Alex for this kind of exchange. During training, a correct label often led directly to the named object. A piece of cork could be handed over for chewing. A key might be given for handling. Access to a particular location could follow a spoken destination. Researchers call this intrinsic reinforcement. The reward is the object, action, or result named in the response. This direct connection makes the outcome easier to interpret than a system in which every correct word earns the same food treat. Imagine Alex asking for a nut and receiving a wooden block. If he accepts either item, the spoken request may simply be a general way to obtain attention or a reward. A stronger pattern appears when he rejects the block and repeats the request for the nut. The response remains directed toward one outcome. Across repeated exchanges, researchers can compare the word with what Alex accepts, refuses, or continues seeking. Refusal requires careful interpretation. A parrot may push an item away because it is full, distracted, or temporarily uninterested. One rejected object cannot reveal a detailed private intention. Evidence grows through consistency. When the bird repeatedly requests one item, declines an incorrect substitute, and accepts the named object when it arrives, goal-directed communication becomes the most useful explanation. These exchanges also differ from answers given during formal testing. A trainer may hold up an object and ask, "What's this?" The question starts the interaction and narrows the expected response. A spontaneous request begins with the parrot. No one has just asked it to name a color, quantity, or shape. The bird selects a vocalization because a desired change has become possible. That change might involve receiving food, moving to another perch, or gaining access to a person. A signal chosen for this purpose becomes a tool. Its value comes from a history of producing a useful and specific result. The same phrase can also reveal how context shapes meaning. "Wanna go chair" may function when Alex wants to leave the testing area and move toward a familiar chair. A different destination word changes the requested outcome. The sentence frame remains stable, while one part carries the new information. This kind of flexible substitution still falls within a limited, learned structure. Its importance comes from practical use rather than the length of the phrase. Performance during experiments could vary from one trial to another. Scientists distinguish competence from performance. Competence refers to what an animal has learned and appears capable of doing. Performance is what the animal produces during one particular attempt. A tired parrot may remain silent despite knowing the answer. Boredom can lead to repeated sounds or playful, incorrect responses. Interest in the object may interfere with the expected label. Alex sometimes requested the item instead of answering the question about it. Those moments complicated the data, while also showing that the objects carried value beyond the test. Motivation therefore matters when interpreting mistakes. An incorrect response may reflect weak understanding. It can also come from distraction, fatigue, or a stronger desire to end the session. Researchers need many trials across different days before deciding which explanation fits best. Through these repeated interactions, Alex's vocalizations sometimes served as more than reports about the world in front of him. They helped him choose between possible outcomes and influence the people around him. That makes the exchange more personal, while leaving an important concern unresolved. Alex spent decades receiving unusually careful social and language training. Evidence from parrots with no spoken vocabulary is needed to show whether complex reasoning exists beneath the words themselves. A parrot can reveal what it knows without speaking at all. In 2012, researchers tested 6 African grey parrots at a rescue center in Vienna, Austria. The birds ranged from about 10 to 35 years old. None of them needed to name an object, repeat a phrase, or answer a spoken question. Their task involved 2 small containers that looked identical from the outside. Each container was opaque, meaning the birds could not see through its walls. The cylinders stood about 6 centimeters tall and measured roughly 7.5 centimeters across. A piece of walnut was hidden inside one container. The other remained empty. When the container holding the walnut was shaken, the food struck the inner wall and produced a rattling sound. Shaking the empty container produced silence. After watching the demonstration, each parrot selected one of the 2 containers. Choosing the baited container allowed the bird to receive the walnut. The easiest trials provided a direct acoustic clue. A researcher shook one container from side to side. A clear rattle indicated that something solid was moving inside. The parrots often selected the noisy container, showing that they could combine visible movement with the sound of a hidden object. More revealing trials use silence. The researcher shook the empty container, while the baited one remained still. No rattle came from the moving cylinder. The birds could not hear the walnut because its container had never been shaken. Success required them to use the absence of an expected sound. A moving container with a loose object inside should produce a noise. The silent container was therefore likely to be empty. That left the unshaken container as the more promising choice. This kind of reasoning is sometimes called inference by exclusion. Information about one option allows an animal to rule it out and select the remaining possibility. Silence becomes useful only when the bird understands what the movement should have caused. The parrot succeeded when the containers were shaken horizontally, moving from side to side. Their performance changed when the same containers were moved vertically. During the up and down trials, the birds no longer selected the correct container as reliably. That difference was unexpected because a walnut should still rattle during vertical movement. The researchers suggested that the motion itself may have interfered with the bird's interpretation. Parrots naturally move their heads up and down during several common behaviors. Young birds may bob while begging for food, and adults can use similar motion during social displays. The familiar movement may have drawn attention away from the physical connection between shaking and sound. It may also have made the human demonstration harder to treat as information about the hidden walnut. This detail showed how an experiment that appears simple to a person can look very different to another species. The direction of a hand movement can alter what the animal notices. Researchers also tested whether the parrots were merely attracted to the rattling noise. Recorded walnut sounds were played while a container was moved in ways that broke the normal connection between motion and sound. The birds did not simply follow the speaker or select whichever container seemed connected with the recording. Their strongest performance appeared when the visible shaking and the real sound fit together as parts of one physical event. The researchers described causal inference as the most likely explanation. Causal inference means using an understanding of how one event produces another. A hidden walnut moves against a wall, and that collision creates sound. Every simpler learning explanation could not be completely ruled out, so the result was presented with appropriate care. Repeated experience with containers and rewards may have contributed to the bird's choices. Even with that caution, the study revealed something important. The parrots combined information from sight and hearing while tracking an object they could not see. Their decisions used both a sound that was present and a sound that should have been present, but was missing. No English label was required. The birds answered by reaching toward a container. This places complex parrot cognition beyond the special history of one language-trained African grey. Speech can make an ability easier for human researchers to observe, while silent choices reveal similar processing through action. African greys provide several of the clearest examples. Though parrots include more than 400 living species with different bodies, habitats, and social systems, their capacities cannot be reduced to one famous bird or one familiar type of talking parrot. A broad view of parrot speech requires more birds than any laboratory could reasonably house. Researchers therefore turn to the people who live with parrots and hear them every day. Caregivers can report sounds collected across years of ordinary life, rather than during a few short testing sessions. That approach brings a clear limitation. Owners may interpret phrases generously, forget unsuccessful moments, or pay closer attention to birds already known for talking. It also opens a window onto species that rarely appear in formal experiments. A large survey published in 2022 gathered reports about companion parrots from homes around the world. After incomplete and unusable entries were removed, the final dataset included 877 birds. Those parrots represented 73 species across 33 genera. A genus is a group of closely related species within biological classification. The birds ranged in age from less than 1 year to 54 years. Their reported vocal repertoires included human words, short phrases, whistles, electronic noises, and other copied household sounds. The range was enormous. Most parrots reportedly used fewer than 15 copied sounds, words, or phrases. A small minority had repertoires numbering in the hundreds. One bird might say a name, copy a telephone, and give a familiar greeting. Another could produce many labels and longer sequences gathered over years. Grey parrots showed the largest average reported repertoires in the survey. That result fits their public reputation as skilled mimics. Yet the averages did not describe every individual. Some grey parrots used relatively few copied sounds. 13 respondents reported birds that did not mimic human-associated sounds at all. Several belonged to species whose other members in the same dataset had developed clear vocal repertoires. This individual variation matters. Belonging to a species with strong vocal learning ability provides a biological foundation. The bird's personal history shapes how much of that potential becomes visible. Daily exposure to speech can differ greatly between homes. A parrot may hear one person for several quiet hours each day, while another lives in a busy household with changing voices and frequent visitors. Motivation also varies. Some birds appear eager to copy whistles or words. Others direct more of their learning toward natural calls, movement, object play, or social gestures that humans may notice less readily. Regular contact with other parrots did not produce one simple effect across the full sample. Living with another bird could provide additional social sounds. It might also reduce the need to use human speech for attention. The result depended on the species, the individuals involved, and the structure of the home. Age created another complicated pattern. A focused analysis examined 187 grey parrots with known ages. Older adults did not steadily accumulate larger and larger repertoires. A bird with decades of experience did not automatically report more sounds than every younger adult. The collection appeared capable of changing through replacement. An old phrase may fade after a move. A former caregiver's name can become less common. New household sounds may enter as daily routines change. This pattern fits an open-ended vocal learner whose social environment continues shifting through adulthood. Sex also failed to produce one universal rule across all parrots in the dataset. Certain species showed narrower differences between males and females. Those patterns may reflect species-specific courtship, territorial behavior, or social roles. They cannot be applied evenly across the entire parrot order. The survey was never meant to calculate the percentage of all companion parrots that talk. Recruitment naturally attracted people whose birds already mimicked noticeable sounds. Quiet birds were less likely to inspire an owner to complete a questionnaire about vocal imitation. The study therefore describes variation among the reported animals, rather than the true frequency of talking across every household. Its strongest lesson comes from the spread itself. Vocal learning grows from several influences working together. Inherited brain and vocal anatomy provide capacity. Social experience supplies sounds and consequences. Opportunity determines what the bird hears, while personal motivation affects what it practices and keeps. Speaking ability cannot serve as a simple score of intelligence. A silent parrot may solve physical problems or recognize social routines without producing a single human word. A bird with a large repertoire may repeat many sounds in narrow situations. Counting vocabulary reveals how much has been copied. The more revealing measure is how those sounds are arranged, and whether they appear in the situations where their possible meaning belongs. A parrot may repeat one familiar phrase with nearly the same rhythm every time. The words can arrive as one stored sound pattern, much like a short piece of music remembered from beginning to end. A bird might say, "Good morning, Charlie," whenever the curtains open. The whole phrase could be held in memory as a single unit, without each word carrying a separate meaning. Greater flexibility appears when part of that sequence changes. The same bird may later say, "Good morning, Sarah," after hearing a second person greeted in the same way. A food request could keep the frame "I want," while the final word changes from apple to cork. This kind of substitution suggests that at least some parts of the phrase may be available as separate pieces. The Large Companion Parrot Survey published in 2022 asked caregivers whether their birds ever rearranged words into combinations they had not heard in exactly that form. 42% of the parrots were reported to do this sometimes. Another 23% were said to reorganize words frequently. These reports included birds that inserted names into familiar phrases, combined shorter expressions, or altered the order of copied sounds. The survey also asked whether parrots used their vocalizations in suitable situations without a person saying the phrase first. 36% were reported to do this sometimes. 53% were said to use copied sounds appropriately on a frequent basis. A bird might greet someone arriving through a doorway. It could produce a food-related phrase while watching a bowl being prepared. Another might call a person's name when that individual had left the room. These patterns suggest that many companion parrots do more than play back every sound at random. The figures still require care because caregivers decided what counted as a new phrase and what counted as appropriate use. Two people may judge the same performance differently. An owner who knows a bird's routines well may notice useful context that a visiting researcher would miss. The same closeness can also make an uncertain phrase seem more meaningful than it would during a controlled test. The survey sample contained another limitation. People with noticeable talking parrots were especially likely to participate. The percentages therefore describe the reported birds and cannot be treated as the behavior of every companion parrot. Phrase rearrangement can also arise through several different learning systems. One parrot may store a complete sequence and repeat it as a single acoustic block. Another may learn that one position inside the phrase can hold different names or object labels. A third bird may join familiar sounds in a personal way, because the combination attracts attention. All three performances can produce a phrase that sounds new to a human listener. They do not reveal the same level of language processing. Human grammar depends on broad rules for arranging words and changing their forms. The rules allow a person to produce a sentence never spoken before, and allow another person to understand it on the first hearing. This open-ended system is called productive grammar. Productive means that the system can keep generating new structures rather than relying on a limited collection of memorized expressions. Grammar also includes syntax, which controls how word order changes meaning. The parrot watched the dog, describes a different event from "the dog watched the parrot," even though both sentences contain the same words. Morphology is another part of grammar. It concerns changes within words, such as adding an ending to mark past time or more than one object. Parrots have not shown this full human system through ordinary phrase rearrangement. A bird that replaces one name inside a familiar greeting may still be doing something flexible and useful. That performance can reveal memory, social attention, and control over parts of a learned sequence. Its value remains clear without treating it as proof of unrestricted English grammar. Careful limits make the genuine abilities easier to see. Some parrots appear capable of moving beyond exact playback. They can use familiar pieces in altered forms and place copied sounds into fitting moments. The clearest examples may come from very short labels rather than long sentences. A person's name gives researchers a focused test because the sound should remain connected with one particular individual across rooms, routines, and changes in the surrounding phrase. Individual labels already have a long history in parrot communication. Young green-rumped parrotlets in Venezuela learn distinctive contact calls from the adults raising them. Orange-fronted conuries can answer a companion by shaping their own call toward that bird's individual pattern. Those wild calls differ from human names, though they perform a related social task. They help direct attention toward one particular member of a group. Inside a human home, parrots encounter a new set of identifying sounds. A caregiver may call the bird by name dozens of times each day. People also address children, visitors, dogs, and other birds while the parrot listens nearby. Names appear during greetings, departures, feeding routines, and calls from one room to another. A study published on April 17th of 2026 examined how companion parrots use these human labels. The researchers analyzed information collected through an online survey between October of 2020 and August of 2024. Caregivers had reported words and phrases used by 884 parrots. Among those birds, 413 had at least one reported phrase containing the name of a person or animal. That equals 47% of the parrots with usable language information. Together, they produced about 800 examples involving names. The birds represented many species. Some said only their own name. Others used the names of human family members, companion birds, or household animals, especially dogs. 145 parrots were reported to use more than one unique name. At least 26 birds used 4 or more, and one individual reportedly knew at least 9. A name appearing in a parrot's repertoire does not automatically show that the bird knows whom it identifies. Many parrots hear their own names inside complete phrases such as "Hello, Polly," or "Good night, Charlie." The bird may store that entire expression as one familiar sound sequence. Some also use their own name when calling for attention, because humans often begin interactions by saying it. This differs from the usual human pattern, yet the result can still be socially effective. A parrot that calls Charlie may cause someone to approach, even when Charlie is the bird itself. The strongest examples included clear information about the situation in which a phrase was used. Caregivers supplied enough context for researchers to identify appropriate name use in 88 parrots from 30 species. These reports included 131 phrases judged to fit the correct person or animal. Some birds greeted particular people by name when they entered. Others called for someone who had left the room. At least 10 parrots reportedly requested specific absent people, using the name only when that individual was elsewhere. Certain birds also used different names for several household members. A phrase directed toward a barking dog could contain that dog's correct name, rather than the name of another animal nearby. These patterns bring the behavior closer to individual reference. A proper name is a learned signal connected with one person or animal. Convincing use requires more than producing the sound clearly. The label should follow the same individual across changing situations. It should also remain separate from labels belonging to other members of the household. Researchers used several coders to review the reports. One person classified each phrase, another checked the decision, and a third helped resolve disagreements. Even with that care, the information still came from caregivers rather than controlled laboratory trials. Owners may remember a perfectly timed name more clearly than an incorrect one. Their knowledge of household routines can help interpret a phrase, while their expectations can also add meaning that the bird did not intend. The study therefore provides broad evidence across many species, rather than final proof for every reported case. Direct experiments could strengthen the result by presenting several familiar people, changing their locations, and recording which name the parrot selects without visible guidance. Correct use of a name also reveals little about the other words surrounding it. A bird saying "Good night, Sarah" may recognize Sarah while treating "good night" as part of one stored routine. Still, the reports show that sounds borrowed from human speech can become attached to particular social partners. The old parrot system for tracking individuals appears able to accept labels supplied by another species. That ability brings the evidence close to everyday language, where an appropriate name can make a copied phrase sound completely understood. Careful limits remain essential, because recognizing one person inside a sentence does not reveal how much of the entire sentence the parrot comprehends. A familiar phrase can contain several layers of learning at the same time. One part may be recognized as a person's name. The full sequence may belong to a daily routine. Its tone can predict whether someone is arriving, leaving, or offering attention. A useful result may keep the phrase in the bird's repertoire for years. This mixture helps explain why parrot speech can sound more complete than the evidence behind it. Research supports several forms of understanding. Many parrots recognize recurring sounds and distinguish them from unfamiliar ones. Words can become associated with events, such as food preparation, bedtime, or a person entering the room. Some birds produce copied sounds in fitting situations without hearing a human say them first. Carefully studied individuals have gone further. Alex used selected vocal labels for objects, colors, shapes, and materials. He transferred some of those labels to unfamiliar combinations. Tests involving same and different required comparison between two objects. Relative size tasks asked him to identify the color or material belonging to the larger or smaller item. His numerical work connected spoken labels with quantities up to 6, along with limited later work involving higher numbers and written symbols. Requests such as "I want cork" allowed a learned word to change what another individual did. Refusing the wrong object and continuing to request the desired one made the pattern stronger. Other African grey parrots have solved hidden food tasks by combining visible movement with sound. They sometimes use silence as information, when a shaken container should have rattled and did not. These findings come from different experiments and different levels of control. Together, they support acoustic recognition, event association, contextual use, reference, concept transfer, relational reasoning, quantity, requests, refusals, and information shared across the senses. Human English contains a much larger system. People understand sentences they have never heard before. Word order changes who performed an action and who received it. Small changes within words can mark time, number, or possession. Listeners also follow long conversations in which meaning depends on earlier sentences, shared background, and implied ideas. Parrots have not demonstrated this unrestricted system. Their reported phrase combinations usually involve familiar units, practice frames, or sounds collected through repeated household routines. A bird may know that, "Where's Sarah?" causes Sarah to answer from another room. The phrase could function as one stored signal. Sarah may be recognized as an individual label, while the remaining words carry less separate meaning. A parrot could also connect the whole sequence, with the result of summoning someone. Appropriate use therefore reveals a real relationship between the phrase and the situation. It does not reveal exactly how each word is represented inside the bird's brain. The researchers who studied companion parrot name use gave this same warning. A phrase used in the correct context may contain only one understood element, or it may be stored as a complete sound pattern. Caregiver reports alone cannot separate those possibilities. Several ordinary learning processes can produce speech that appears highly meaningful. Reinforcement gives a phrase value when people respond with attention, food, movement, or access to an object. Daily routines connect sounds with predictable events. Emotional tone helps a bird distinguish an excited warning from a quiet greeting. Subtle human movements can guide a response during testing. Owners may remember an unusually perfect use of a phrase more clearly than 10 poorly timed examples. Long memorized sequences can also be repeated with great accuracy. These explanations can operate alongside deeper understanding. A bird may recognize a person's name, predict what a phrase will cause, and repeat other parts, mainly because they belong to the familiar sound pattern. Parrot understanding is therefore uneven. Certain sounds become stable labels. Some phrases guide useful actions. Particular birds have shown categories and relationships under controlled conditions. Large areas remain untested, especially the private experience behind those behaviors. Science can measure what the bird chooses, says, rejects, or seeks. It cannot directly confirm whether the experience feels like human thought. The most accurate answer sits between two simple extremes. Parrot speech includes far more than empty copying in many cases. The evidence also remains far below full human command of English. Specific islands of meaning appear through prediction, reference, category, and social use. Their boundaries differ among birds and may change across a lifetime. Once speech is understood in this layered way, a talking parrot becomes more than an impressive voice in a cage. Its words reveal an animal prepared to watch companions closely, learn the sounds that matter to them, and use those sounds to take part in a shared social world. That shared social world continues after the lesson ends. A parrot that calls someone's name, requests an object, or copies the sound of a familiar routine is trying to affect what happens around it. The response may be simple. A person approaches, opens a door, offers a hand, or returns a greeting. From the bird's point of view, the sound has changed the social environment. This helps explain why speech should never become the main measure of a companion parrot's well-being. A large vocabulary may be entertaining for people, yet the bird's daily needs extend far beyond performance. Companion parrots retain many behaviors shaped by life in the wild. Even when their parents and grandparents were raised in human homes, their bodies remain built for climbing, flying, gripping, and tearing materials apart. Their beaks continue growing throughout life and are used to open food, explore surfaces, and break wood or plant matter. Wild parrots may spend hours moving between feeding sites and working through tough shells, stems, fruit, or seeds. Food placed in one open bowl removes much of that physical and mental work. Foraging devices can return part of it. A parrot may need to lift a flap, turn a small piece of wood, or pull paper aside before reaching a piece of food. The reward remains visible or detectable, while the bird controls how to obtain it. Destructible materials provide another useful outlet. Untreated wood, cardboard, and bird-safe plant fibers allow chewing and tearing that would otherwise be directed toward furniture or cage fittings. Safe movement between perches, stands, and rooms gives the bird choices about distance and location. These activities matter because a social learner needs several ways to influence its surroundings. When vocal attention is the only reliable path to change, calling may become especially persistent. Human reactions can strengthen unwanted sounds without anyone intending to teach them. A parrot gives a piercing call from another room. Someone immediately shouts back, walks toward the enclosure, or begins an animated conversation. The response may feel negative to the person. To the bird, it can function as attention. Angry attention still confirms that the call reached a social partner and produced a result. Laughter can have the same effect on an unwanted phrase. A single rude word may create more movement and noise than 20 quiet greetings. That energetic response makes the word memorable and worth trying again. Positive reinforcement offers a calmer route. A desired behavior is followed by something the bird values, which increases the chance that the behavior returns. Quiet contact calls can receive attention. Stepping onto a perch may lead to access to another area. Independent play can be supported with fresh objects and safe materials. The useful alternative gains a dependable consequence without frightening the bird. Punishment can add fear to an already complex social situation. Yelling may become part of the exchange. Sudden grabbing can damage trust and make hands harder for the bird to approach later. Communication works more clearly when the animal can predict which behaviors lead to safe outcomes. Changes in behavior also need careful interpretation. Feather damage is sometimes connected with stress or limited stimulation. Medical conditions can produce similar signs. Skin irritation, infection, pain, or nutritional problems may all affect the feathers. A sudden change in vocal activity can appear during hormonal periods, after disrupted sleep, or when something in the environment has changed. Withdrawal may reflect illness as well as fear. Repeated movements can grow from learning history, physical discomfort, or an environment offering too few choices. An avian veterinarian, a veterinarian trained in bird medicine, can help rule out health causes before a behavior is treated as a simple habit. The same caution used in language research belongs here. One action rarely reveals a complete inner state. Patterns across time, setting, and consequence provide stronger information. A talking parrot continues observing people even when no one is asking it to speak. It notices which calls bring company and which requests open access to a favorite place. The bird also learns when communication fails. A home that provides movement, problem solving, social contact, and periods of quiet gives that learning system more than one path toward a useful result. The familiar hello can now be heard as part of that wider life. Its meaning may come from arrival, attention, habit, or a learned social greeting. The sound remains the same, while the history behind it determines how much the parrot may understand. Return for a moment to the quiet room where this journey began. A door opens, someone steps inside, and a parrot says hello from across the room. The word may be a copied sequence that the bird enjoys producing. Repeated arrivals may have connected it with doors, footsteps, and familiar faces. Attention could also give the sound a useful result, since people often answer, smile, or approach when they hear it. In some birds, the greeting may carry all of these layers together. Its meaning becomes clearer through patterns across time. A parrot that says hello during many arrivals uses another phrase during departures and adjusts its behavior according to who has entered, provides stronger evidence than one perfectly timed greeting. Context gives the sound a place. Repetition reveals whether that place remains stable. So do parrots understand English? Current evidence suggests that they do not understand English as the complete language system used by humans. Many parrots still learn something real about selected human sounds. A word may become linked with a person, an object, a visible property, or a likely event. Certain phrases help birds request activities or gain attention. Carefully studied individuals have used labels across unfamiliar objects, compared relationships between items, and reported quantities that remained constant when every object changed. Those abilities grow from a vocal system with a much older purpose. Wild parrots use learned calls to maintain contact with companions hidden by vegetation or separated across a landscape. Green-rumped parrotlets acquire individual signatures from the adults raising them. Orange-fronted conurers respond more strongly when another bird's call appears to address them specifically. Social identity already mattered before parrots began hearing human names. Their bodies provide the control needed to copy those names. Sound begins in the syrinx near the lower end of the windpipe. The trachea, throat, tongue, and beak then reshape that sound by changing the spaces through which it travels. This source and filter system allows a bird without human lips to approximate vowels, consonants, laughter, and electronic noises. Inside the brain, connected vocal regions guide the process of hearing, remembering, attempting, and correcting. The unusual core and shell arrangement found in parrots has roots extending back at least 29 million years. Lifelong vocal learning allows sounds to enter or leave the repertoire as the bird's social world changes. Human attention then selects which copied sounds become useful. Association connects a word with what regularly follows it. Reinforcement gives the vocalization a result, such as receiving an object or bringing someone closer. Categorization allows certain labels to follow a shared feature across unfamiliar examples. Reference can connect a sound with one individual even when that person changes rooms or appears inside a different routine. Broader grammar remains a separate ability with far less support. Alex supplied some of the clearest controlled evidence. His labels could identify colors, shapes, materials, and more than 50 objects. Relational tests required him to compare items and respond according to whether they were the same, different, larger, or smaller. Numerical tasks linked vocal labels with sets containing as many as 6 objects. Requests and refusals showed how words could influence an interaction, rather than merely describe what was present. Other African greys revealed reasoning through silent choices, including the use of expected sound to locate food hidden inside opaque containers. Large surveys show that these abilities vary widely. Many parrots use only a small number of copied sounds. A few reportedly develop repertoires containing hundreds. Speech quantity alone cannot reveal how much a bird understands. Recent caregiver reports suggest that some companion parrots use names appropriately for particular humans or animals. Those reports now need controlled testing that changes the speaker, location, and possible individual being addressed. Future research can combine automated home recordings with acoustic analysis, which measures the detailed structure of sound. Playback tests in wild flocks can reveal how parrots respond to altered calls. Long-term home studies may show whether a phrase remains stable across years or changes when relationships and routines shift. These methods can describe behavioral function with increasing precision. The private experience behind the sound will remain more difficult to measure. A parrot's voice emerges from a parrot brain shaped by flight, flock life, and lifelong social attention. Human words enter that system as new acoustic material. Some remain playful copies. Others acquire a predictable event, a desired object, a familiar individual, or a useful social result. An echo can therefore become more than a repeated noise without becoming a complete translation. Under the right conditions, it gains a place where it belongs. That limited and uneven meaning is genuine, and it may be the most remarkable answer the parrot could have given us.